Thanks for tuning in to the World XP podcast. If you're enjoying the content, please drop us up, drop a like, and let us know your thoughts below in the comments. Also, please consider supporting our podcast via the link below. It really helps us out.
Max, welcome to the World XP podcast. How are you, my friend?
I'm fantastic, Eric. Happy to be here.
Glad to hear it. So, why don't you do a quick intro? Tell the people who you are and what you do and kind of what we'll be talking about today, and then we'll hop into the conversation.
Sure. So my name's Max. I have an AI real estate search startup called Pinhous, kind of like Pinterest for real estate, where to summarize it. We use computer vision to make styles and features and real estate listing images searchable. So you can filter beds, baths, price, location as you would on any other listing portal, but also big backyard, crown molding, wooden floorboards, natural light, Victorian style, so on and so forth. And we think image is the last frontier of search, or at least the next to be explored, and we want to hop on board that for real estate. I also work as an SEO for a marketing agency. We work specifically with dental clinics, and so getting to them to rank highly on Google is kind of the crux of the job, what goes into satisfying Google for them to be the top result in their area.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I'm doing a master's, and that's about it. That's who I am currently.
Sounds good. A lot of things going on for sure. So, the question from the last guest, he started when we were talking about it offline afterwards. He kind of said like the concept of a meme, sort of a shared understanding of a thematic image. Um, and so the question kind of is, what is something that makes you happy when you and somebody else share an understanding of a third concept? So kind of like an inside joke or like
Mm.
using the concept of a meme. What is an example, or maybe like how does that concept how do you feel about that concept?
Well, oh my, I feel very on the spot for this. I think shared experience and shared understanding are two different things that are deeply valuable when growing close to a person and being able to share, at least with memes, a sense of humor related to something that you have to be part of the zeitgeist to understand or to have seen. I mean, phones are very isolatory. We exist in a little vacuum scrolling, and memes are what bridge that divide in a very obnoxious and silly way. Um, that's how I see it. Not to make them too like emotional, or I don't know if that much work goes into them, but our desire to share with each other and understand things goes really deep, and it's like an itch that I don't know if other animals have, but humans definitely do. And so we see that for memes.
Talk about creating that shared experience with so when you're doing your SEO work, but also with Pinhouse, you're creating some level of that shared experience with your clients, whether it's the dental practices, because you have to build a relationship with these people and make them understand the world that you step into, right? If you're a dentist and you spend all day cleaning teeth, you don't know anything about Google and search engine optimization and all these other things. And by the same token, you've got to do the same with like the real estate business, which has done practices in a certain way for a certain amount of time, and you want to go in and change both of those things. So you have to go find common ground in both sort of in both instances. How do you go about doing that? Because I would imagine it would be quite a little bit difficult for, like with a dentist, I feel like it would be an easy sell. It's like, oh, we're gonna put you higher on Google, so and we'll do these 5 things, and they're probably like, okay, sounds good, just go do it. But with the real estate, it probably is a little bit different because they've gotten certain ways of being successful and they like those ways. And there's a new thing. It's like, I don't want to learn the new thing. I'm already doing fine. I don't need this other thing that's may or may not work well. So talk about creating that shared experience with your clients and how do you go about doing that?
The short version of the answer before I dive into it, 'cause it's a really great question, is just ROI, prove a clear return on investment for them. Uh, like I don't have to change the wheel for you to say, I'll get you this many more clients. Very easy to communicate that. They'll say yes to it. It's a very competitive market. If you can do anything for them to get more business, they'll say yes to it. True for real estate and for dentistry. Fostering a deep connection with the dentists, or one based on trust, because with SEO results, there's some quick wins, but also things take time. And I'd say it's similar to the stock market, except if the stock market was one huge company that controls a whole space like Google does and has a black box on what they say and do. And so things are very different. So making sure that they like you and like working with you when Google updates the way search is done and all your positions are lost and you're like, damn, I gotta fix this, is you need that type of relationship. But dentists have, I think, the highest suicide rate out of any profession. They're the most depressed people. Their financial obligations to make their practice work are through the roof, and they've been through the ringer with years and years of school and expensive schooling at that. So they've a lot of debt, a lot of costs. It's competitive, and I assume some of them love MILFs, but like you're looking at MILFs all day. They are very anxious people too. I'm not painting a bad picture. I'm just saying to understand them. They like to have an understanding of everything that goes into their business, including the SEO. So surprisingly, they know a lot about this space. Like you got to know what you're saying when you speak to them because they might ask a question that could expose the whole thing if you're not prepared. So unlike in real estate where it's like I will get you more leads, it's not just I will get you more leads. It gets very granular.
Hmm.
Which also I really appreciate clients that are curious about things and like to ask questions. But with the dentists, they're anxious all the time, and so you have to communicate with them in a way that they understand they're in good hands. And that goes beyond saying it'll work. It's just like actually getting granular about it. And also understanding that they're stressed and sometimes they need a reprieve. So they might text you at 6 or 7 because they're done work, asking about deliverables, and just a nice time to say have a good evening as well. Um, and then for the real estate side of things, we work mostly with buy side agents, or we should be working with buy side agents. We help them get new clients that are looking to purchase a home. So listing portals are our first point of contact for most home buyers. Most home buyers end up picking an agent for friends or family, but there's a big enough portion for these big companies like Zillow and Homes.com and Realtor.com and the States to be able to funnel a lot of leads towards agents. And so it's extremely competitive on the buy side. There's far too many of them. Uh, Recent changes to the way real estate transactions are conducted and transparency around that has really hurt them. And so if you can say that you're going to be at the bare minimum, like you want to do a lot more, but you're going to be doing your job function in the capacity you hope to when you signed up for this, is also enough of a sell. And they're willing to test things with you. And at least with our current business model, we only take money when they make money. So it's not, there's no risk involved for them. It's just
Hmm.
if we can help you, we're happy as well.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I want to clarify one thing about when you said the dentists and the suicide rate. So just for the people listening, Max is in Canada, and in the US, I think there's several other groups, veterans in the US and things of that nature. So I just wanted to put that out there
Mm.
for the people listening. Um, so let's go to um hmm, let's go with the with Pinhouse. I want to know what was the kind of the light bulb for starting that? What was the kind of hole in the market that you saw?
Mm.
Because when we spoke a month ago or whenever it was, um, you are not necessarily looking to buy your own home. So it wasn't like you were
Are
looking
too
to buy
young.
a home and you were like, "Oh, I wish I had this thing that could do these things for me."
Mhm.
So what was the hole in the market that you saw?
So
What was the light bulb? And then how did it sort of come together in this way?
I'll tell the long version of the story because I think it's a very important
Mm-hmm.
thing for people looking to start a company to hear. At least with most investors, they try to recognize patterns, and there are patterns related to successful business. If you've not felt the pain point yourself and you're just looking for an opportunity in the market, chances are at a certain point your passion's going to fizzle out, statistically speaking. And if you don't feel that pain point acutely yourself and really want to solve for it because it's helping you or someone in your life, and you're just looking for a great market opportunity, that's not the same. Money isn't as much fire under your ass as having a deep desire to solve something. Um, so I was in Costa Rica celebrating after graduating with a poli sci degree. And about a weekend, I mean, I went there on with soul searching in mind, but I was considering the heck am I gonna do? And I decided on entrepreneurship because that seemed like the path where you can take the most ownership and agency in your life. And if you have any semblance of pride, having a position that's built around building something and making something new and proving what you're capable of means a lot. And I want to prove that to myself. So, with that in mind, went for a couple ideas, a lot actually, just kept pivoting through them until I settled on property technology because North American real estate's the largest sector in the world. And AI, at least from the outside, seems like the opportunity of today. So there had to be something in AI in real estate. And what I noticed was that Homes.com, which is owned by CoStar's one of the biggest players in commercial real estate, owned by Andy Florence, um, filed a lot of discovery suits against competitors due to their images being found in their databases. And the listing description and details, sure, you should only be getting that information if you have MLS access or the equivalent in commercial real estate. But the images are what's proprietary, what you can file a suit on, what is actually competitive if you're trying to pressure your opponents. And so I viewed image as this last frontier in the portal wars. It's called the portal wars between all these listing portals.
So talk to that piece for a little bit, because I think if people were just to go, they're going to look for a house or whatever, and they go on Redfin or Zillow, or
Mhm.
Redfin is one, right? I think.
Redfin's
Yeah,
a big one.
Redfin, Zillow, Homes, whatever it is, they all have
Mm-hmm.
pictures. So so
So
I guess what's the disconnect in my own brain then of the image rights and stuff?
no disconnect. Uh, so every listing portal has, for the most part, the same data. It's all coming from the multiple listing service, MLS, which is part of the regional real estate board. And, every broker is part of the regional real estate board, and every agent that works for a broker is part of it. So every listing is listed on every portal immediately in that market. If an agent chooses to create their own website, they work with a third party tech vendor and they use their MLS data feed. That's part of their what they pay to be part of that board
Okay.
to get that data. Some of the portals don't have this access. They don't have a broker model where they're not categorized as brokerage in that market, so they don't get full access to the feed. You can still pay for at least 70% coverage, or if you're Zillow, then you have significant opt-in and still have all the listings on the market. Um, but data enrichment. So if every portal has the same data and data itself, data is valuable, but it's not data itself that's valuable. It's what you do with data that matters. And so if you enrich data in a way, then you do have something competitive that's proprietary, or at least a function that might not be able to be replicated in the same way if you have IP. And so some of these proprietary experiences are what the portals are built on now. So Zillow has Showcase that premium agents can pay to display their properties in certain ways. Um, Redfin has something with stable diffusion that you can view what different styling might look like, and you can move a little scroll across an image. Homes.com has not really done any of that. They're just spending billions on advertising. You saw them at the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Uh, and so that is really, as I see it, the last space to compete in. Because besides offering you money back by just taking less of a commission and saying it's cash back and then fronting the initial sum so that you can afford your mortgage and get some assistance. I don't see price being a competitive factor across the portals. It's just greater search tools and functionality. That makes more sense in buyers markets where you can actually
Yeah.
express the value of those tools. Um, but so I wanted to be an image in real estate, um, and specifically in search. So initially we were thinking like Tinder for real estate. And by the way, every property technology company, half the ones I know, they started with Tinder for real estate and pivoted away from it fast. Reason for this, I don't know if you've used any of the dating apps, but there's
No, I've been
Hinge.
with my person for like 8 years,
I,
so
Congratulations, Eric. That's
thanks.
amazing. Well, I'm still looking for mine. So I've tried out these apps. I've done market research. And on Hinge, which is a dating app, you have to interact with certain prompts on profiles.
Hmm.
Whereas with Tinder, you just swipe on it. Now, whether it's a person or a home, if I'm trying to build better recommendations for you and find something you actually like, what information did I get from you swiping on that? Like, sure, I can see where actually on the card you are when you swipe no or yes, and where you paused the longest. So that's all implicit. But with explicit interactions that maybe you can feed text into something like Hinge, where you have to interact with a prompt on a profile and feed a response, which really just, you flirting with them in the response, you get far better data to build a recommendation system. Um, Anyways, Tinder was the wrong approach. If I were to go with Tinder for real estate, it would be Hinge for real estate.
Hmm.
We're not currently. It's a B2B offering we're considering building for some agent partners that they can, we just have a little app white labeled and they can send notifications to their clients with listing recommendations and they interact, but that's not what we're primarily pursuing. Pinhouse I decided on. I've been answering this question for like 10 minutes. I just
That's
realized
fine.
I
You're
went on a
good.
lot of tangents. Um, Pinhouse I decided on because I was looking at the large demographic of home buyers today, and all these portals don't really differentiate themselves in ways that actually are targeting these demographics, or they don't really have
No,
niches. They're
none.
just
Like when we were looking for ours, is the set we just picked Zillow, and then like there at one point I was looking through Redfin and one or two of the other ones, and like you said, it was all the same data.
Mhm.
Some of them were like slightly more complete than others. But in terms of what it gave us, it was a picture of the house, square footage, bedrooms, bathrooms, a few other things, couple pictures, and then at that point it was just like we'll just go look at it. Um, so yeah, no differentiation at all.
So if they're all the same, why is no one doubling down on certain niches of different home
Hmm.
buyer demographics and focusing advertising towards those demographics? Right? Why not create a differentiated product, at least in design? In any other market, if every company has the exact same data, I said data enrichment, but the other component is design. Design is just fresh paint. You can copy fresh paint in a day. It's not a competitive advantage. If you're looking at competitive advantages and trying to decide for your business, don't just say, we look better than the alternative. But in this space, design means a lot because
Hmm.
design is your brand. Um, so our listing portal design isn't just better, it's built with a certain type of home buyer in mind. And that's the largest demographic of home buyers today. That's family oriented, likely second time, with a female involved in the purchasing process. More than men, especially in single purchasing. I think females make up like double the amount. This is data from North American Real Estate Association, NAR. Um, and then I looked at Pinterest, which is 80% female,
Hmm.
and the average age is 25 to 35. It's a little younger than the average home buyer, but it will be.
Hmm.
Um, and the number one use case on Pinterest for 60% of users is home decor and design.
Yeah.
And then you look at a platform like Houzz, 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 which is an interior and home decor inspiration platform. It does a lot more than that, but it's a visual platform for all things real estate. besides purchasing. Uh, you can find contractors on it. A lot of them use it as a, I think there's a CRM tool built in on the other side. Like they've really grown in that space. But that's I forget how big it is, but it's a multi-billion-dollar company. I haven't had to give this pitch in a long time. So it's a multi-billion-dollar company. And we'd kind of like to be like House or Pinterest, but for real estate search. Visual oriented, familiar experience, targets this target demographic, and we innovate in visual search technology. It's a really good position to be in. It's one we're really excited to be in, and it's one that we plan on launching in the next 2 weeks. So this is also very aptly timed
Ah, there you
to be
go.
on
Look at
something
that.
like
So, okay, so talk to me about the visual function, right? Because you with all the other kind of portals that we've mentioned before, there's filters and you can filter via square
this.
footage and price and this many bedrooms or bathrooms, et cetera, et cetera. So what makes you guys different from them?
Mhm. So very good question. I'll try not to get too technical on this.
Go ahead, it's fine. If
But
I don't understand, I'll ask, but it'll be all good.
well, you're more technical than me, I think. I'm just the business
Maybe.
side. Yeah.
Fair enough, fair enough.
Uh, so right now, if I'm searching fireplace or pool or marble countertops on a listing portal, it's standard filtration.
Hmm.
With standard filtration, you can't guarantee that that field exists in the listing. And
Okay.
so you're filtering away a lot of results. So when we were speaking to agents, we did a couple months of just agent interviews back to back to back, trying to getting insights we could. How important are images in the listing? The most important thing. That's what drives people. Would you like visual search because of images? Absolutely not. It's like, what? It's like, yeah, if I set one of those filters in a curated search for a client, there's a good chance they're missing about 40%, if not more, of the listings that they would have considered. Um, because the listing portals can't account for all those features. It's either from the listing description or some MLS now are using vision models where when you upload a listing, it takes tags from the image and that becomes a feature that you can search, but the portals have to implement that too. So it's very inconsistent and there's a good chance someone misses a property. So standard filtration search is not the way to go about it. It has to be something that's more semantic that comes down to recommendations, visual recommendations. How close is it to your preferences? No filtration of preferences. How close is it? We wanted to do a percent match for listings. Would easier be easier to do if we just did it based on style. But if we could do an all-encompassing percent match on properties, this one's up your alley, 90%, based on all the feedback we've received, that could be a really powerful tool. One Home, which is CoreLogic's new um, product. So before they had Matrix, I don't know if you've bought a home before, right,
Hmm.
Eric?
Yeah, yeah.
And when you're working with your agent, they gave you access to a portal through their MLS.
Well, um, we, my wife and I were kind of looking on our own. We knew what area we wanted to be in, for work and a variety of other things, and so we had a lot of stuff narrowed down already. And then where we are outside DC, um, price was a very, very big filter, so it filtered
Mm-hmm.
things down quite quickly. Um, so yeah, we had access to her stuff, but we did a lot of the searching on our own, like
Mm-hmm.
driving through neighborhoods and things like that. Just and we ended up settling on because we both were on the same page for a variety of features. Like, okay, we need a backyard for the dog. We need this,
Mm-hmm.
we need that, we need a few other things. And by the time that we actually kind of narrowed it down, it was really just because things were coming on the market and going away like that. So it was like we're just waiting to see if one pops up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we weren't really doing a lot of the filtering in the same way that you would be describing because the inventory was so low, so there wasn't that much to go through actually.
So yeah, we're aiming for buyers markets,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
more inventory. Um, but anyways, One Home, product by CoreLogic, offered in a lot of MLS. Uh, they in the early stages wanted to build a percent match, but thought it was a bit too ambitious at the time. With AI, consistency goes down a bit, but it becomes far more feasible to do a match like that.
Yeah.
And so that's something we're starting to roll out with images, but we want to bring in the listing description too. So when you get listing recommendations of what comes on the market, we have an AI summary for you explaining how this fits your preferences based on your interactions and whatever other information you feed us. And that's visual and from the description. Also, if you search and you're searching for something very odd like crown molding, well, we've straight vector search for these features. So guaranteed we'll find every or the majority of listings on the market just based on that feature being in the image.
So for crown molding,
So
for instance, that's inside the house.
yeah.
So does the AI like you do you have images of inside the house, or is your AI searching through like records of um like descriptions from the portals, or like
Mm.
how does it get to your percent match?
So it's coming from the image. So if you're doing straight vector search, it wouldn't tie in to the percent match, but that
Hmm.
comes from us running the images through image tagging model. So it's data annotation first. So the images
Okay.
run through an image tagging model that's trained, machine learning trained to detect features in real estate images up to a certain caliber, quality features. And so then that metadata is used and we store that with the listings. And so we can provide back and forth recommendations. But
Hmm.
the problem with those tags is they also are not too consistent. So if you're just searching directly for a feature, it's
Hmm.
better to do the straight vector option where you either upload an image and we do a visual similarity search or you search for a keyword.
Yeah.
And we don't get the keyword from the metadata, we get the keyword by going straight into the images. So
Gotcha.
two paths computationally that are both quite expensive, but at the scale we're at, not so much. It's just doing a lot of fun testing with technology.
That makes sense. That makes total sense. So talk to me about the business model then, because I think people would be listening and saying like, "Oh, that's pretty cool. Like if I could go on that and search, I want a pool and a marble countertop and four microwaves and whatever else like crazy things that they want, and it'll just send me a listing that has all the things I want or something, some
Mhm.
percentage of the things that I want." So for you guys, when we talked previously, you're aimed at
Mhm.
agents specifically, or brokerages and things like that. So how do you go about advertising this? Do you just cold call people, or are you walking into people like, "Oh, I've got this cool thing," or like how do you go
Mhm.
about doing it? Because so you mentioned previously that there's no risk because you don't make any money unless they make the sale, or the
Yeah.
transaction. So how do you go about gaining clients? And what's kind of the future looking like for, so like if somebody in my area, for instance, an agent was like, "Oh, this sounds cool. I'd like to use it." Are you strictly um around Toronto, or are you everywhere? That's a lot of
For
questions, but
now,
like talk to me about the business model and
I'll
how it
go
works.
through. I'll try to go through each of these. Might take some time. But it's a standard commission model for a listing portal. So we generate the lead for the agent and we touch the transaction after the fact. So out of the buy side agent's commission, we take a portion of it.
Hmm.
Because of that, we don't necessarily need more agents in any market we enter. We just need at least one agent to get the MLS feed. And then we're generating business on behalf of that agent. And so as long as they can fulfill the amount of business we can generate in that market, then we don't need more agents. If there are more agents, we're working with an agent group, and the first agent we work with in any market, we get let them recommend who else we bring on. Of course, we screen them after, but it's better to have a partnership with the agents you're working with in any market. An alternative business model we considered or were proposed. So there's a big company in the States that also owns one of the portals, or it's owned under a conglomerate, and they sell leads. They have this lead selling business. And so we could have got 70% national coverage for only about $10,000 a month, which is really low from these guys. And whatever leads we generate, so if someone comes on and signs up, We'd then sell them those leads, and they would sell to an agent for more. And then that agent would be calling this person and annoying them all day. And this company recently got in a lot of hot water for the quality of these leads being absolutely garbage. Um,
but still charging for them. So they're basically sending
exactly.
out bogus, not bogus, but like, yeah, I got you.
So I prefer the business model where anyone that comes on the portal, have fun with it, get your value out of it. If you end up working with one of our agents, great. If not, we're still going to email you a couple times with recommendations, see if you want to partner with one of our agents if you don't have one yet. Otherwise, we're not allowed to make it pay to use or anything like that, because really we're leveraging a data set that belongs to the agents, that works for the sake of the agents, that we'd be monetizing something that they have buy into to create value. So we would lose our license immediately if
Yeah.
we tried to make it pay to enter or something of the sort. Uh, yeah, that's why every portal is free or should be free if you find one it's not. Probably not allowed.
Interesting. You mentioned the passion for your work and money is not necessarily the best like motivator to continue to working.
Mhm.
How have you found the real estate sector then, in terms of you liking it, or right? Because you've got the entrepreneurial
Mm,
spirit, and you could have picked anything really. Like the model that you've picked, you could have picked it with real estate. You could have picked it with like maybe not cars, but there's a lot of different things with AI that you could have gone after. So
totally.
why this avenue, and how have you found, like, what do you like about the sector itself?
Mm. Most real estate agents are entrepreneurs. They are one man or woman armies a lot of the time
Hmm.
that juggle so much between the technology they use and the clients they deal with that it's very easy to see eye to eye with them and understand their hustle. And that's something I appreciate a lot. It's also a people business. So more than anything, your character and you're able to communicate goes a long way. And I personally prefer that to something that's just, I said ROI oriented before, but if I'm in a industry where it's just I provide this value, you get this, that's it, I wouldn't be as happy. If you're trying to nurture any type of sales skills or think you're good in sales, real estate's a really good sector to be in, especially if you're not just a salesperson and you're actually
Hmm.
passionate about other things. Um, so that's the shorter version of it. I'm in this space because I feel good in this space. A previous guest of yours who recommended me to you, doing a little call out for Gerald,
Yeah.
told me in one of my previous ideas for a startup that I only pursued for about a month, but I really didn't like the market. It was the event industry. He said, you're going to be in this space for at least 7 years. Average lifetime of a company is 21. You usually exit maybe 10 years on if you've raised venture capital. So at the very least, 7 to 21 years around the 10-year mark. Imagine committing that much of your life to being part of an industry that you don't mesh with the people in, that you view
Yeah.
negatively, that you don't like. So where you choose to operate, it shouldn't just be the price incentives. It should be your passion for that space and how well you gel with people in it and your room to grow in it. Um, so pick a market you like. That's, I guess, the piece of advice there.
Did you get lucky with this choice, or did you do research into which different sectors? So you mentioned the event industry. Did you look into any others prior to you're doing your soul searching in Costa Rica? You're like, I want to
Mm,
build my own business. Like, oh, what are some good industries that I can try and look at? Or
mm.
was this the first one and you got, well, maybe we can call it luck, but
That there's always an element of luck. Things
yeah,
fall
of
into
course.
place. But fintech is an amazing market
Hmm.
if you like finance. But fintech is huge. When people say AI is the opportunity of today, you can do really well in fintech and make a lot of money. Uh, Other markets I considered, I actually really like the nonprofit route. There really isn't enough money in it, but I really like the nonprofit route. I had a couple innovations that I wanted to make in that space. I think entrepreneurship and problem solving shouldn't be limited to money. It should be how can I actually help people? Because the crux of
Hmm.
innovation is helping people.
Yeah,
And so even if those incentives aren't there, it's like, if you don't mind me going on this tangent,
go
I
for it.
go downtown Toronto every day. I think Times Square, but the little Canadian version, Young Dundas Square in Toronto. And that's where my office is through this deep technology incubator we're part of called the Innovation Boost Zone. And I see homeless people on the street every day, a lot of them. There happens to be a safe injection site nearby. I don't know if you guys have that in the States, but
I don't know.
can of worms.
Probably something similar. I would imagine San Francisco and like LA and some of those cities in California probably have something similar.
Exactly.
Portland. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so there's all these people that have such a strong pain point that really need help that people just walk by. And if I'm to help anyone, like I'm told to help people every day, that's the point of what I'm doing. And I'm in the space to innovate and solve problems. And yet, I'm creating a premium feature rich real estate search that might only apply to or applies best to wealthier home buyers. And that just made me feel something like it would be really nice if I could do something for these people, that I don't just have money, I have my mental faculties and my connections to actually do something for these people. So I wanted to innovate there. I had a couple ideas that were a bit fintech, a bit um, charity oriented to help people at the poverty line or beneath it. So that was another sector I was really excited about. Now, SEO is something because I work in it, like I see some opportunities there. But also never enter a market where your success is dependent on one variable. If you can get regulated in a day and you go out of business, if Google can change how their algorithm works one day and you go out of business, don't.
Yeah, it's not a good look.
Oh yeah. And then the other sector was age tech because my grandpa's 93 and he's been scammed a couple times from people calling and pretending to be the bank. And I don't think we do enough for these people and to see how they
No.
deteriorate when they go to the bank and are in that walk of shame, which really you go to the bank now and these days and you just see a lineup of old people that are confused and stressed and they shouldn't be worrying about this stuff and it causes them to deteriorate faster. Maybe I'm making it a bit too poignant, but you see where I'm coming from. It's like we
No,
really don't do
I
enough and they're preyed
completely
upon.
I completely get it. On a tangent on the scam stuff, have you seen any like Mark Roper or any of these like I forgot what there's some guy that has like blue hair and he's calling scam centers all the time to like unscam or
Oh,
like
I
counter
love
scam.
those videos.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like there's people like them that are off doing stuff and like for example, oh what is the guy's name? Do you know who I'm talking about? Oh, it's gonna bug me now. I can see his face. I don't know. Actually,
I don't know the
Let me
names,
Google it. Hold on.
but I
But
love
while
those so
I'm
much.
Googling it quickly,
Mhm.
scammer payback. What is his name? Oh, his channel is Scammer Payback. Um, anyways, point being is
Mhm.
this guy, so he will somehow get on these call lists, and when he goes and he's talking to these people, he's stalling and he's like back tracing their IP addresses and shutting down
Mhm.
networks and stuff. And to your point about people not doing enough, I was also going to relate it into what you mentioned earlier about innovation is generally about helping people. And I think that's one of the big things that we, like from a philosophical perspective, forget in terms of government intervention versus like a free market type system where it's if we've got government programs to solve all these problems, we lose out on the human ingenuity of creating new problems outside of what would be a limiting system. And you might say, okay, well, the government system might reach more people, and that might be true, But if you are stifling potential solutions that could help a lot more people, then you run into this kind of well, it's the paradox that's always been, right? You've got it's called now the right versus the left, but you've got like more
Mm-hmm.
progressive versus the conservatives. And just from a philosophical perspective, not even talking about political parties, but just like things are good the way they are, and we can tweak a couple things, or like, no, we need to change all these things. Those philosophies always have to be in balance because the conservatives with no progress, then things become stale and stagnant, and the progressives without the conservatives, they change things too quickly and it becomes chaos. So you need this balance all the time. Um, and I think it's super interesting, right? Because you say, well, not you, but people will say, and I
Mm-hmm.
think your age thing with the scamming is super important. It's very hard to police that from a policy perspective, especially when these people are not even in
Mm-hmm.
your country. And so you've got these guys, I think he's got like millions of subscribers now on YouTube, and this
Mm-hmm.
is like literally what he does, and he's got all these other people that are helping him do it. And to your point about I want to innovate and help people, yeah, there's only so much you can do with maybe the homeless situation outside your office,
Mm-hmm.
but you learning how to create a business, then you can once it scales, right? For instance, you mentioned that you're the business guy, so you've got technical people doing it. You can scale
Mm-hmm.
yours, and then you can go into another one with your experience of creating, of innovating before, and then maybe you can
Mm-hmm.
go into a new sector. And I think that really fostering that entrepreneurial spirit, especially like in the US, especially, I think it's like that's kind of what the American spirit is there for. And I think we've lost that recently. So it's really good to see that you're doing that, and I think that you make a lot of good points. Do you have thoughts on that?
You've spurred so many ideas here. I'm figuring out which one I should pursue before we go on the next tangent.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I'm gonna go with the one that I think is the best advice for people. It's venture capital is far more likely to invest in you if it's your second rodeo, if you've gone
Yep.
through it before. It's because you've shown resilience in the space, you know what pitfalls to avoid, but also everything you've learned that first time around sticks with you. And so the faster you take the initiative to start snowballing as a person, the better, regardless of the outcome of your first go at things. I was doing product management for our team, which at one point was over 20 people. We've now cut it back because we weren't getting the results we wanted with that many people. I was spending all my time managing them instead of watering the garden with people that are really important for our future success. And we're actually moving faster now with less people. We've like five. Uh, and I did all the design work for the platform, which is semi-technical. I don't have to write a line of code, but knowing what functions we actually can do and can't do when I'm painting a pretty picture on Figma uh, is crucial. So these are all new skills I picked up along the way. It's like I could lead technical teams now. I get a job in that space. Do I want to? Maybe. Product managers are problem solvers too. But hmm, which part do I want to go to? Okay, two steps forward, one step back. That's the mantra of conservative, liberal, or Republican, Democrat, or
Hmm.
should be. Sometimes the parties wear different hats, but fundamentally, what they're meant to represent is two steps forward, one step back.
Hmm.
That's progress. So you go back to France, it's Liberté and the Conservative Party. I'm forgetting half what it's called, but that's the French Parliament where they would sit on two sides of the house, and half would agree and half wouldn't. So it turned into those parties. Um, as for how private sector innovation is good for society, I would cite a famous thinker from, I believe, the 60s, Jean Rawls. He might be one of the most important thinkers in Western political thought to ever come about. But pretty much, I'm going to butcher this, but imagine that we're all just little white blobs overlooking
Hmm.
a potential world that's going to come into existence. And we're deciding where on some axes people are going to be. What's the lowest point and what's the highest point? And so you reach stabilization where we could all have amazing lives and one person could have a terrible life, but there's a chance that when you inhabit a body, your blob is going to end up being that person. So
Mm.
you don't want to risk it. This is how we get a social safety net if we take the abstraction away. It's what's the lowest point I can fall to in society and what's the highest I can achieve. And then also, how does the highest point pull up the bottom parts of society? And that's ideally good taxation. And also, it's the refrigerator and any innovation that people were rightly rewarded for their efforts to the betterment of everyone else. So you need to be hungry to innovate on behalf of people.
Hmm.
This is kind of a very simplified argument against communism too, I
Yeah.
think. But it's also what I really like
Well,
about the
I
West
think
is how we spur innovation.
I think the way communism has been implemented is an argument against it by itself. So, um,
Mhm.
but anyways, yeah, no, I think that's I'm with it. I was just doing a quick Google on Mr. Rawls while you were talking about it, and it's that it is that balance in which society is always kind of um not fighting with itself, but you've got a situation in which it's like that's always the seesaw, right? Of how far do we go one way or the other? And
Mhm.
I don't think there's one right answer, to be honest. I think there's different answers depending on what the time is and what the time requires. And I would also hypothesize that as a general rule, if you have a mentality within your culture or society to innovate and to work hard and to create, then the social safety net could be there from the culture itself rather than some entity, whether it's a government or whatever,
Mhm.
that is taxed. And I think that's like in my head, that's almost the ideal where you've got the culture is the safety net, right? It's like your neighbor is having trouble, so you're going to help your neighbor out of your own free accord. Um, that's maybe idealistic. Of course, there's bad people in the world that will take advantage of such situations, of course. Um,
I
but
worry we're losing the safety net. By the way, the cultural safety net
oh yeah, yeah,
of do
absolutely,
good by your
absolutely.
neighbor. Like,
No, 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 100%. I don't disagree at all, right? We're definitely losing that. Absolutely. And somehow we've got to figure out a way to get back to that. So at least in the US, right, the last 8 to 10 years have been bonkers in terms of you say an opinion and then immediately somebody will pinpoint you on one team or the other, regardless of whether you
Mhm.
actually are. I feel like that's been changing recently, at least in the US. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know how much you've been paying attention to the US political stuff, but there's
In
been some
Canada, we
people.
pay attention to it more than we pay attention to our own stuff.
Yeah,
So,
well, I'm sure it's been entertaining to say the least because it doesn't. But so you've got people like Bobby Kennedy Jr. who are now with Trump and Tulsi Gabbard, who's now with Trump, and then other people who would have been Republicans, Dick Cheney, et cetera, endorsing Kamala Harris. And we're seeing the shift of like, there are some positions that I disagree with both candidates on because they both share support of um, Israel, for example. I'm not really sure what the best case is for that, but I'm not sure that how we're doing it is a good one. But they both agree, generally speaking. Both candidates agree. Um, and that wasn't the case 4 years ago, where it was every issue was one side or the other. In this case, now you've got issues that they both agree on, or they both fall on a similar side of it. Um, so I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic, maybe. And in terms of the Israel thing, is I try to do my research, and that's the conclusion that I've come to. Of course, is my own relative opinion, but it feels I don't know. Like most issues, it becomes very simplistic when it gets shot out into the media.
so
And that the history of that region. Speaking, shameless plug,
Mhm.
there's a whole episode on the history of that. We tried to go as in depth as possible, but it's only an
Oh
hour, so
wow.
there's only so much you can do. So
Mhm.
go watch that. But anyways, I'm optimistic, cautiously, I'd
Sweet.
say, about the neighborly thing.
I'd uh I'd want to touch on something in that. It's our desire to simplify or categorize or pattern match to take away critical thinking because when answers are not obvious and they can't be obvious and they take all our emotion and compassion and drain us and really bring on this sometimes existential dread, it's easier to just say, oh, that's a Republican or that's a Democrat or we should pull out of Israel or we should support it absolutely and so on for
Hmm.
any policy decision. It's easier to just blanketly step on one side of things because it takes away your responsibility to think any deeper and see the
Yes,
people
exactly.
around you as people. Um, so on that note, I like that there's people on both sides politically that are switching sides, assumably, and that people are starting to, once again, because social media is kind of like yellow news in that it's built to polarize and hook
Hmm.
you in. People are starting to look at policy. And I agree with some of this person's policy and I disagree with some of it. And it's not because I hate the other side. I worry that a lot of Kamala's campaign is just the other side is racist,
Yeah.
but also the some of Trump's campaign is the other side is snowflakes. Um,
I haven't
but
seen
we're
that
moving
as
away
much.
from that.
Yeah, I
I haven't
haven't
seen it
seen
as
that as
much,
much.
but
This go around. I think more Kamal's campaign is more Trump is Hitler,
ye-
now, and
yeah.
that's super interesting as well because obviously he had a couple shots taken at him, and they were like, "Oh,
Mhm.
we need to tone down the rhetoric," and then 1 week later, they're like, "He's a threat to democracy and he's Hitler," and it's like, didn't you guys just say that he was? Yeah. Anyways, I yeah. So,
Mhm.
anyways, keep going.
Um,
Unless you're
I wanted
unless
to
you were done.
return to something from before,
Hmm.
but I'm already forgetting what it was. Oh, innovation.
Yeah, yeah,
Innovation in countries. The United States is great at it. You guys have Silicon Valley.
yeah.
There's, if you go to Silicon Valley as a founder, which you should, your likelihood to raise a round increases heavily, even if you're not a top pick, because there's so many investors there. It's super competitive that the top picks are taken. You're dancing with one of the wallflowers, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it's much easier to get investment there. And so many other countries are trying to mimic the innovation that you guys have in Silicon Valley. There's a ton of uh, Dubai money going into the United States. Uh, Not so much Canada. I read a book on this. I mean, it's something how we can win
Hmm.
about Canadian innovation ecosystem. It's from maybe 6 years ago, and a lot of the innovations have taken place since. But it was pretty much how we have oligopolies and a market that is way less free than many other Western developed nations, and that we have three big uh, internet companies and phone companies. I'm,
Hmm.
I'm blanking on some words here.
Yeah.
That have no desire to innovate, similar to our banks. They're not doing anything to innovate or
Well,
improve because
we're
they've
the
got full
same.
foothold on the entire market.
Hmm.
And they're supported by the government in their positions, and anything that threatens them is not allowed. And so we had a company called Wind Mobile, that's now called Freedom Mobile. It's owned by one of the big players, and it's owned by Rogers. That was meant to stir things up and actually offer competitive rates similar to the States. And I know it's bad in the States, but your rates are fantastic compared to ours when it comes to internet, or were at the time.
Hmm.
Um, Even US companies didn't want to enter our internet space. Verizon refused to, or they considered
Yeah.
it and changed their mind because Canada is so the government's gonna fight you tooth and nail along with these companies because they're on the golf course together.
Yeah.
Um, but you need to have a free market without any monopolies so as to make sure things are consumer friendly. If you have a monopoly, things are anti-consumer. That's one. Two, innovation is about who. So, for example, in Canada, there's a lot of venture capital that's propped up by the government because why should the government become an investor for the sector when they can give that capital to people that professionally are investing in the sector? Um, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's step two. Innovation budgets. The problem is none of that money is going to be freed up until 2026 because we need a change in government for people to feel comfortable putting that money on the market. So
Yeah.
come 2026, these floodgates of venture capital and government money with venture capital is going to be open in Canada. And the third one is the cultural aspect of innovation. How do we model what exists in the valley? How do we make entrepreneurship
Mm,
cool?
yeah.
Uh,
Talk to me about that because I try to pay attention to stuff outside of the US as well. And my general vibe is that people in Canada are not super happy with Trudeau and the way that things are going at the moment. I saw
your
one
vibe is
clip,
right.
yeah. Um I saw one clip, I think Trudeau was talking to steel workers maybe. I don't remember.
Sounds
And he
right.
like brought donuts or whatever, and the guy was like, "No, screw you, man! Like our health insurance is like I can't even afford this or that." And then like Trudeau looks kind of uncomfortable, and he's like, "Well, did the other guy get donuts?" And he kind of walks away, and the whole clip was kind of weird from the standpoint of like he didn't know what to do. Because I didn't think he expected somebody to look him in the face and be like, "You suck." Wait, like he didn't say that, but
Wasn't there an
that
awkward
was the
video
vibe.
of JD Vance at a donut shop too?
Um.
They tried to do
No,
some publicity. It was not nearly.
that was a cheesesteak place, I believe, in Pittsburgh,
Mm,
and it was awkward because the people that were running it wouldn't let him in.
that's fucked.
Yeah, so they
Excuse
were
my
like, "Oh,
language.
wait, no, that's all right." They wouldn't let
But
him in. Speaking of JD Vance, oh, I was gonna get to this as well, so I'm doing the whole
sorry for
tangent thing
driving
as
you
well.
off.
No, you're good. So the other thing that I was gonna mention earlier was that the politicians now are going on non um like big podcasts, and this is the first election cycle that it's really changed. JD Vance has gone on a bunch of podcasts like we would
Oh,
4 years ago, we never would have gotten a clip with the vice presidential candidate sitting across from a comedian, and the comedian is
mhm.
going, "It's so sad you can't even do cocaine in this country anymore." And the vice presidential candidate busts up laughing, right? Because they're talking about the fentanyl crisis, and he makes a
That's
joke
the
about it.
Australian guy, right? I still
No,
need to watch that episode.
Theo Vaughn is
He's Australian, right?
no, he's from like Louisiana and he lives in
Really?
Tennessee. He is the most
Oops.
like one of the most American.
He's
Yeah, yeah,
hilarious.
yeah. He's so funny. Um, Okay, but Trudeau, so in terms of innovation and stuff like that, because we heard about the trucker protests back in
Mhm,
2021, something like that.
mhm.
And then it was like, oh yeah, Trudeau froze all their bank accounts. And we're all sitting
Fucked
there
up.
down in the US like, what is going on up there? Like, what are you guys doing?
So
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
let me, yeah, I'm not going to say if I do or do not support the truckers, just because that's a big Canadian issue. There's a lot of
Sure.
false news about that. But that's also when our current, pretty much the head of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, who's going to be the next Prime Minister of Canada, because everyone is unanimously in support of the Conservatives. Thanks how terribly a job Trudeau did, but also Pierre's pretty good,
It's been
in my
that
opinion.
bad. It's been that bad that is almost okay. What are you
It's
expecting? Like,
unanimous.
are you expecting like a complete
The
landslide?
biggest
Just yeah.
majority we've had in history.
Oh my God.
It's that bad. Well, I don't want to get into this too much, but that's
Anyways,
when
go ahead.
Pierre's career started because he was giving coffee to the truckers.
Oh, that's that guy. Okay. Tracking.
He was the oh my God, Minister of Real Estate. I'm blanking on what it's called under Stephen Harper, and he did an okay job, good job, but like nothing noteworthy. That said, average rent was like $700 in Toronto. Now it's over 2,000
Oh.
under our previous prime minister. Um, but they were going to run O'Toole again, who is a very bland fella. I don't know if he'd win. the same way Andrew Scheer lost to Trudeau because he was also pretty bland, no personality. Pierre has the integrity to stand by opinions. And, I heard him say something, he said, and I think this is even poignant with the conflict going on in the Middle East. He said, I'm not going to go to a synagogue and say one thing and a mosque and say another thing. I stand by actual opinions,
Mm.
which is great for a politician too. But why did I bring this up? Oh, Pierre's great. That's when his career started. That's also, I mean, I just liked Trudeau before, but our executive is more power than the executive of the United States, not in terms of the country's capabilities, but
Hmm.
power over the people.
Yeah.
Um, Prime Minister elects his cabinet. They don't have to share anything related to what they conduct in that cabinet. And that's a whole arm of government that has a level of secrecy that you don't get in the States. I guess the equivalent would be like the Senate kind of sucks,
Well,
is the
I don't know.
closest.
We could go into that, but we're running
Yeah,
short on
we
time. So
don't,
anyways, keep going.
we're running short. So Trudeau freezes bank accounts, right? That's fucked. And
Was
you
that an
see
executive
his,
act? Like, was that him, that his
so,
decision?
oh, I would love to expose it. So Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland is like goes on like the Wicked Witch and it's like we're gonna freeze their bank accounts. Like she was excited about it. I don't know if you've seen the clip when they said it was
Uh,
gonna happen. But what substantiated bringing in the military during the convoy to split it up to disperse it. And by the way, way worse protests in Canada now, but nothing's being done about them. But what was justified to bring in the military was supposedly there were terrorist elements in the convoy. And it was stated by Marco Mendicino, who's a local minister near me. I forget what he's minister of, but he's a MP that's like in the riding next to mine. He said that the RCMP detected terrorist elements in the convoy, so we have to call in the military. On trial a year later, the RCMP is asked, were there terrorist elements in the convoy, and did you tell the government that? They didn't. There was nothing to substantiate bringing in the military or freezing the bank accounts. And of course, because the media, so we've state-owned media, we spend $1.2 billion on a year. Um, CNN,
mhm.
CBC or CNN. Oh my God. We spend 1.2 billion on state media every year, and it's really a propaganda engine for whatever party's in power. I think the Liberal Party takes advantage of it more, but whatever party's in power gets a $1.2 billion media engine that a lot of people treat as gospel. So of course you see nothing about what I just told you.
Mhm.
With the RCMP saying there were no terrorist elements in the convoy. So everything is covered up. People have the memory of a goldfish,
Yep.
and the government is never actually held accountable. But now for the coming election, tons of liberal MPs say we need to get rid of Trudeau because everyone hates him so much and replace him with someone else so we have a competitive chance. Those MPs were all complicit in all the stupid policy of the party. But yeah, that's enough with the short memory most people have to say, oh, it's not the party that did a terrible job the last 8 years. It was one guy.
So they're running top cover for
So
themselves,
stupid.
basically. So they're throwing Trudeau under the bus to save their own ass.
Mm.
Interesting. Interesting, interesting, interesting. Is Pierre running on a like is that part of the what he's running on to have bring accountability for those things that occurred?
The big one is axe the tax, which is axe the carbon tax. You don't have a carbon tax in the States,
No.
but we have a tax on carbon to oil
Mm-hmm.
that is driving up the cost of groceries, right? Because trucks use oil.
How much is like a dozen eggs where you are?
$6,
Jesus Christ, man.
six Canadian.
That's
I'm in
nuts. Like,
Toronto, but might just be my grocery
what
store.
about gas?
Gas? Oh, oh, this is terrible. I don't drive.
Oh, okay. Well,
Would not know. It's a lot. Um,
more
but
than
this
four?
carbon tax, huh?
More than $4 a gallon?
Um,
That's so nuts. It's oh
so this carbon tax is meant to, and like we make up maybe 1% of the world's emissions. Like our
mm-hmm,
emissions are bad, but compared to developing countries that need to emit to
mm-hmm,
develop, it's nothing and it doesn't make a dent.
mm-hmm.
This this taxation is meant to be punishment for using oil and gas to incentivize people to use cleaner options, electric options. But when that affects costs in our supply chain, that's just an unnecessary tax.
Yeah.
How are you fixing our emissions if you're just taxing emissions that affect home heating, that affects the cost of our supply chain, drive
Yeah.
up everything? It's
Well,
ridiculous.
this is like what
So
California
acid
did.
tax is a big thing.
California did
Mhm.
Gavin Newsom he put some mandate through that said there would be no sales of gas powered vehicles after like 20 something 2030 maybe. And then that same summer they were like, "Oh, by the way, don't charge your electric vehicles because our infrastructure can't handle it." And it's like, bro, you're gonna make people buy electric cars and then tell them to not charge them because of it's too
It's
much energy,
ridiculous.
which is point in the it's just like I don't know. I had a guy who's kind of in the energy policy sector on maybe
Mhm.
a couple weeks ago, and he was like it's just speechless. I had the same kind of thing with him. I was like, well, what are they doing? He's like, well, I don't know. It's like does nobody know? It's like people are just voting for these things. And to your point earlier about then it makes people you got the responsibility to think about these things. One, there's a lot of things to think about. It can be very stressful to like actually pay attention and realize what's going on. And then you've got to compartmentalize the fact that you can't like me and you as individuals can't really do much about it. We can do things like this and put it out into the internet and have open and free conversations about kind of the issues and what we think about them. And that's kind of like we've got to speak the at least what we view as the truth and have that open dialogue and hopefully the more people that see it can become aware and like I don't blame people for not paying attention. It's stressful and it's hard and it takes a lot of time to
Mhm.
sift through what's real and what's not. And like you said about your broadcasting service that they get the 1.2
Mhm.
billion you said 1.2 billion dollar check for
Mhm.
a state run media and we've got
Just like China.
we've got similar things here. It's not I would say as explicit although you could argue that. And it's like it takes a lot to sift through and it's a lot of time and a lot of energy. And if you're just getting into the space
Mhm.
of paying attention, it's so much. Like I know people that are like, oh, it's too much. And then they start paying attention and then it becomes easier because they can identify what like smell out what things seem like BS and what things aren't. Um but with all that said, we're running to the end and this has been a great conversation for sure. Do you have any last
Oh,
nickels?
yeah.
Because I know you got a hard stop that was actually like 2 minutes ago. So
Oh,
um
no, no, my hard stop's in 3 minutes. So
Oh,
we're all good.
good. Let's okay,
Um,
well then we'll wrap up now. You got any
yeah.
so two questions. One, if there's any real estate people that are looking that would like to use
Mhm.
Pinhouse, how should they go about getting in touch with you or how
They
can
can email me at max, at pinhouse without an E,
Mhm.
.com. I'd say call me, but long distance rates would apply. They
Yeah,
can also just click the contact button on our website.
I'll put the link in the description
Yes.
to the website. And so you're open to other areas as well?
So every MLS we enter, every multiple listing service almost doubles our costs, or just we have to pay the same amount for all our services in each market we enter. And there's also far more data that we have to run for our models. So we're being very strategic, but being able to prove demand in these markets is very valuable. And I'm in the business of building relationships with people and doing good by them. So any market we enter, if someone reaches out, would wholly consider it. And if we choose to enter that market at any point, it's going to likely be with that person if we get along.
Fair
So,
enough.
and they would have a good gauge of that just after watching this episode, assumably.
Yeah. You
Uh,
would think. Awesome. And then
mhm.
any last nickels? So link to all that will be in the description, of course, for those listening. And then any last thoughts before we get you out of here?
Yeah. Pierre is cutting funding to the Canadian Broadcast Center is another part of his campaign. Um, why is this just turning into an endorsement for who's going to obviously win? Anyways, Pinhouse is great. Dead internet theory, internet being just all AI generated, no accountability, any of it being real. Working as an SEO and trying to optimize for Google and using a lot of these tools myself and knowing the content that my content is referencing is also written by people that happen to not be medical professionals. Don't take what you read on the internet as legitimate. There's a certain level of accountability I can check for, but when the sources I'm going to make sure what I'm saying is legitimate might not be legitimate itself, you should just go to a medical professional for any advice. Don't trust anything you read on the internet, and this is true for any profession, anything. The internet's it's almost useless at this point, which is really scary.
You're
Is
telling me the
big
internet would lie
takeaway.
to me? No, not the internet.
Not the
Ah,
internet.
oh my God. All right, well, Max, I really enjoyed the conversation. People listening, links will be in the description as always, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
All the best.